If you remember your table's on weight.
Socials. It's more it's getting better. I took enough painkillers. I don't know.
You need a picture book?
Yeah, actually later we'll need it. Short stuff. I just say a very quick shiloh. For those who don't carry an Eruv or an area where there's no Eruv, imagine you're walking along and your hat blows off and it lands on the car. What's the car? What's the status of the roof of a car? Anybody know? No, whether it's Shusam Shusachet Kamlis, what is it? Top of a car. No, it's a top of a Shusayachid. Anything which is 4x4.
How about a convertible?
No, not convertible. Okay. Anything which is 4x4x10 is a Shusayachid. So the walls. So if your hat blows off while you're walking along the M62 and it lands on a stationary car, your hat's gone from Shusayachid to Shusayachid. Imagine it's your new hat, Porcelino.
You put it on and then come off the car.
Oh, wait a second. What are you going to do? We're starting Daf Chof Daled Amud Aleph, 7 lines from the top, 8 lines from the top. So if you remember, are you allowed to drink water from a Shusay Rabim while you're standing with Shusay Yachid? Are you allowed to?
Doesn't need to be that big, by the way.
Yeah, if you're standing with Shusay Rabim, you're allowed to drink water from Shusay Yachid. We had it. If most of your head, if your head and most of your body is inside, it's okay. So as Shia says, what you'd have to do is get your head and most of your body to be over the lid of the car, over the top of the car. Put the hat on your head, and then you can come off. So imagine this is the top of the car, and the hat. You're allowed to touch the car, as long as you move it. And you go on top of the roof of the car, put your hat on, and then come off. Okay, just in case it ever happens, I know what to do. I thought, so I looked up quite a bit about Karfov. Karfov is a very, very, very big topic. We've got an entire simon just to define what the Karfov is. I saw an interesting thing, brought down on the Shabur, but it brings from somebody else brings from Yehuda Yehuda, that let's say you have a zoo. Now, what's a zoo? A zoo is different fields. One's got lions, one's got zebras, one's got deer. Each one is enclosed properly, right? They usually have a proper wall around it. Are you allowed to carry inside? Yes or no? What would you say? Inside the. It's not mukh for deer. The Yehuda says you can't. You cannot. It's not. It's animals for your own sake. Domesticate animals you want to find. Here it's not considered mukh for deer. The Yehuda says you can't carry inside the zoo. Because you won't go in. Because it's not made for people to go in. He also says, Mishabur says this actually, is a storehouse, a warehouse is not mukaf l'tira. But almost everything else is mukaf l'tira. For example, we talked about, let's say, parks. It is mukaf l'tira. What? Because it is mukaf l'tira. That is mukaf l'tira. A zoo is not. Because zoo, you walk on the outside, you walk around the perimeter of the paddocks, whatever you want to call them, the enclosures. You don't go in the enclosures. Water park, you go in the enclosures. So you're allowed to carry if it's a less than space society, and otherwise you can't carry. I don't know what they do. Maybe put the food there before Shabbos. Okay, let's get into the Gemara today's Gemara. Not Tavu, but we're up to Chof Daled Amud Aleph, and we're discussing Karfov, and we're up to the 2 dots, about 8 lines from the top. And if you remember yesterday, we said that if you put vegetables, it's considered not mukaf l'tira. Why? Because people can't walk around. Shviz you can. So not avuba if most of it is trees out kechotzer, motor is like kechotzer and smut. Omar v'yodam aravimi v'usho asinat stibulois. As long as they're made in rows. Why? When you've got trees in rows, so then you can use it. You can walk up and down. You can go forward with your eye. You can do something with it. But if the trees are all scattered around, that becomes no longer mukaf l'tira. Even if it's not done in rows, even if it's scattered around without any order, you're still allowed to carry that. Yehuda went to the house of Avuna bar Yehuda. He saw gardens with trees which were not made in rows. Do you know Yehuda Avimi? The Avimi said that it's no good if it's not done in rows. And when I'm not come Nachman Svile, how like from Nachman, and that's how we pass them, that trees don't spoil an area, because after all, you can still use it, and therefore, unless, even if it's not done in rows, it's okay to carry that because it's still considered mukaf l'tiva. Okay. Omar Nachman, a new topic. Omar Nachman, Omar Shmuel. Kalf of Yosef Beis Hassan. You've got a kalf of Monon Beis Hassan. Shaloi hukaf l'diva, which was not hukaf l'diva. So what would you pass? Are you allowed to count it or not? Monon Beis Hassan, it's not. You're not allowed to. Because you've got both problems. It's Monon Beis Hassan, it's not hukaf l'diva. If it's hukaf l'diva, we said even Monon Beis Hassan. For example, if you've got a garden which you use the whole time, it's Monon Beis Hassan. If it was less than Beis Hassan, it's got a upper wall, and it was not hukaf l'diva, it would also be okay. But this one, it's more than base time and it's not hukaf l'diva. So what do you want to do now? You want to build a new wall. In order that it should be hukaf l'diva. That means now you're going to do hukaf l'diva, and you're going to make a new wall and make it hukaf l'diva. So for example, you're going to decide that it's going to be your own personal garden, or for example, you build a house next to it and you open an entrance from the house into the garden. All that makes hukaf l'diva. The problem is that it has to be hukaf l'diva. Build a circle around l'diva. This, when the walls were put up, it wasn't hukaf l'diva. At a later stage, you want to do it. So what do you have to do? You have to knock down a part of the wall and rebuild it for the sake of diva. How much, like a sukkah, very good, similar example. How much of the wall would you reckon you have to knock down and then rebuild to be hukaf l'diva? What would you say?
10 hours.
Oh, good. Most of 10 hours, like Tony. You could have written the glory yourself. Now, what would you say if you knock down 1 hour, rebuild it? Let's say this. Let's just sit there. Here's you've got the whole hukaf. It's more than base assigned this, yeah? So as you say, you knock down 10 hours. Well, knocking down 10 hours is a massive job. So what you do is you knock down 1 hour, build it. Knock down the next hammer, build it. And each time you build the 1 hammer, you do it 10 times, means 10 next to each other. Each time you intend the second time when you rebuild it to do it the diva. But you just didn't knock it down 10 in one go, but you did 10 bit by bit. Would you say that's good that you hook after the diva or not?
No, it's
What
not.
do you gain, by the way?
You haven't,
Is it the
ruined
same
the
when
wall.
you're knocking and building?
Maybe
When you do 10, you're ruining the wall
structurally.
and rebuilding the
Or
wall.
maybe security-wise,
Just do
there's
one
one
by
big
one.
breach.
You've still got the wall. All you're doing is adding, chipping and adding.
Maybe security-wise.
Right, you're asking a technical question that I can't answer. I'm not saying the small over here. What would you say? Would you say that it's hook after the diva or not? I thought, Moshe, you would say something, because we wanted a very similar shaila, and you said what the Gemara was going to say, but you didn't say it this time. Well, you should get into it. Again, let's say it inside again. Omar Nachman, Omar Shmuel, Kaf Yis Beis Hassan Shluk After the Ketzad Oisa, Pers where Pilsa Yisa Mesa. You have to make down a breach more than 10. V'goydroi umamido el esa, and you fix it, and you make sure that it's the entrance. You can make an entrance, but the entrance has to be less than 10. More than 10 is not an entrance, it's a breach. So as long as you knock down the breach of 10 amos, you're okay. Iboilu, parts am of God, parts am of a God. What would you say if you knock down an amma, build an amma, knock down an amma? What would you say? Omali, la b'hainu ditnan. We've had this before. That's what I thought you remembered. Exactly this. Let's say you've got a cup and it's got a hole inside it. Would you throw it out? No, you can still use it. What would you use it for? To store nuts and olives. Let's say pomegranates can fall out, then you would chuck it. We had this in Shabbos. Now, what happens if you've got a keli and it's tummy, and then it's got a hole that pomegranates can fall out of it? So therefore, now it's not useful as a keli anymore, and it's no longer tummy because it's not a keli. What happens if this keli is tummy? So what do I want to do? I want to make a hole the size of a pomegranate. So I make a little hole the size of an olive, which is about, let's say, a third of a pomegranate, and then I close up the hole. And then I make another next to it, another hole the size of an olive, and then I close up that hole. And then another little hole and close it all up. So now there's new wall inside the cup, which is the size of a pomegranate. Do we say that it's no longer tummy? Because at the end of the day, there was a hole the size of a pomegranate, which we filled it. If it's a new keli, it was only the original keli tummy, not this one. Or do we say, wait a second, there was never a hole the size of a pomegranate? So that's what we'll discuss. Omale, Lavanu the thing called klei balabatim. Any keli which belongs to balabatim, there's the opposite of shopkeepers, they throw out kelim slightly quicker. It's homeowners, they keep the things longer because they're not trying to sell it. When you're trying to sell something, if it's got a hole the size of an olive, it won't be so easy to sell, right? Nowadays, we throw everything out. The smallest problem, we throw it straight out. Nowadays, as we saw a lot in Shabbos, people used to recycle things. Every Friday night, when you finish your meal, you take the chicken bones, you make them keys, right? That's what you did in the olden days. So therefore, don't chuck things out. We had that in Shabbos. You take your chicken bones, you use them to make keys and spoons and things like that. It's not muktzah. You got a usage for them, and if you carry them on Shabbos, it's
Nowadays,
nowadays we chuck it out. So, kol klei balabatim, anything which belongs to balabatim, shuon kerimonim. Uboye chizki nikev kemoitzi zayis. It made a hole like the sides of the olive. But sosme close of chazon nikev kemoitzi zayis to sosme. And shishtim and moitziun now. And then you finally make a hole the size of pomegranate, but not in one go, but in stages. What's the din? You taught us this halacha. We've gone from one stage halacha regarding knocking down the wall of a kalfuf, which you needed to knock down 10 amos, you did it bit by bit, to another halacha of a keli where you want to get rid of the tumah, so you're making a hole bit by bit the size of a pomegranate. To a third halacha, a shoe. If it's missing one strap, it is still possible to use it. Missing two straps, it's no longer a shoe. It could use for other things. You could use it to support the table, but you can't use it as a shoe. The halacha is the shoe of a zava or zava. It's got tumas medrus. Tumas medrus is a tumas abhatuma. If a zava or zava sit on something or stand on something which is meant for sitting on, then the item becomes an abhatuma. So therefore, if you got a shoe, it becomes avatuma. What happens if one strap breaks and the second strap breaks? It's no longer a tumas medrus because it's no longer can be used as a medrus. What happens if one strap breaks and you fix it and the next strap breaks? That is the same question as the keli where the pomegranate, you want to make a whole size pomegranate, but you made it stage by stage, or the kalfuf, we made it whole by whole. So it says sandal shnifskachas meos, no, one of its straps broke, particularly fixed it, tamei medrus. It's still tamei medrus because you could have used it. Nifska shnir v'tikno to imina medrus have a tamei magas medrus. Here the more adds one small point. It's no longer a medrus because it's no longer the original shoe. Both straps broke. The fact that he fixed it in the middle doesn't help us. But it's tamei mega medrus. Mega medrus means that a medrus is avatuma. But let's say the shoe would have touched another shoe, so the next shoe is a vishin netuma. Here, the shoe itself is no longer medrus because it's no longer usable as a shoe, but it's tamei maga medrus, meaning that because you've touched the shoe itself was originally a medrus, a zav wore it. So the straps now broke, so it's no longer medrus, but it's maga medrus. This shoe touched itself. Since it touched itself, so therefore it's a vishin netuma, no longer avatum. And you explained to us, why when the first strap breaks, is it still tamid or kaima shniyah? Because you've got the second strap. Shniyah nami or kaima rishonah, by the time the second strap broke, you've still got the first one. It's a new face, it's a new thing. And therefore the Gemara is passing in all three cases that it's a new wall. So if you want to make your kalf of mutter, you can knock panel by panel. Knock down the panel, rebuild the tukaf l'dir. Knock down the panel, mukaf l'dir. And similarly, if you want to make your cup not tummy, you can make a little hole the size of an olive, close it up. Make another little hole next to it, close it up until there's enough holes that had you not closed up any of them, pomegranates would fall out, and therefore it's not tummy. And similarly by a shoe. What? Why? It's not a loophole. It's no longer a keli. It's not. It's a chadosh. Yes, it doesn't matter that you could do that, and normally you can make a proper hole and then fix it, and would still be tummy. Right?
Say the cup's touched itself, and if it was another to look at the touch.
If it's where a cup was a vision, we'll talk about this. A vision said that by Shani we don't have cups of vision. Yes, yeah, we have that. And finally, the same thing by a shoe where there's something medrus, that if both straps snap, of course, it's not a shoe anymore. If one strap snaps, it is a shoe. If one strap snaps, you fix it, and the second strap snaps, it's not a shoe. So the Lord says he was so impressed with this reply. He said about him, less ding bar inish, this person who said this answer is not human, he must be a malach. He is a real person, he's a real mensch, he's a real great Talmud Chacham for coming up with this answer. Okay. So we've clarified this thing. So again, a kalfuf to be mutter, it has to be either less than base sign or more than base sign hukaf l'tira. And it's an important point of here. Shmuel talks about this many times. that if you've got, for example, an area which used to be, let's say, a warehouse, and you decide to now open it up to your house, let's say you build an extension, therefore thing, and therefore now it should be not a car, it doesn't work. You're going to have to do something to make it now hukaf l'dira. It has to be built for the sake of a dira, for living. If it was hukaf for something else, and later the dira is no good. Omar Kana, the area behind the house, which in those days they used to use as only for storage, they never used to go there for any other reason. You can't carry only 4 hours. If you open up an entrance to it, you're allowed to carry the entire thing. Pesach, because the entrance to the house shows, that means they never used to have a back door into the Rechava. What happened was there was a house, which the door would open to a chotza. And behind the house was like an empty lot, which was no entrance to the house from it. And that was used for storage only. And then you're only allowed to, if you open up a door from your house into that empty lot, so now the empty lot becomes a mukaf l'dira, you're allowed to. As we explained, let's say you first opened up your back door into the Rechava, and then you built the wall around the Rechava. I will hook up if you built a wall around the Rechava. And only later you open up your house to the Rechava. Says the Gemara, Pasach, if you open up your house into Rechava, and then you build a wall around it, Pshita, that's mamish hukaf l'dira. What's the chiddush? You've got a house, you made an entrance into the garden, then you built a wall around the garden. You've got no better house in the garden like that. What's the chiddush in that statement? Well, it says it's got a granary. We're talking about you've got a house and you open your back door into the Rechava, and at the end of the Rechava there's a granary. So people might say the reason you opened the house was only to be able to get through the Rechava into the granary, but you're not actually interested in using the Rechava, and therefore the Rechava should be something which is forbidden to be a kaf, because no hukaf l'dira. Kamash malon, that is okay. At the end of the day, since your house opens up into it, so therefore it is okay. There's no pictures of the back. There's a picture over here of it. A second. Right. It's not so, I don't know if you can see it so well. Right, so you can see the house. We've got a chava and it's got a granary inside it. Just want to show you the pictures over here, where you've got, here is trees in a row, which is better, as we said, than trees not in a row. And here, you've got the basket, which got the holes the size of a pomegranate, and therefore can't be used. And here you've got the shoes with the straps break, and therefore both, okay. It says go weiter. Kamash one that's okay. Kalf of Yisrael Sasaim Shukaf Ledira. You got Kalf of one base Sasaim and you built a wall Ledira. So are you allowed to carry in it? It's more than base Sasaim, but it's Shukaf Ledira, so it's okay. But the Smale Maim, the whole thing got flooded. That water is like vegetation, which a person can't comfortably sit around, and therefore it should be awesome. That water is like trees and it is permitted, meaning people do not get disturbed by a field which is waterlogged, and they're still able to use the area. And since they use the area, so therefore it's no longer considered, it's proper mukaf l'dira, and you've got no problem. Only if you can drink the water. That's how Rashi explains. That means the water is drinkable, because then people are actually happy that the field is waterlogged, because then they can carry on drink. If you can't drink it, so therefore it's not drinking water, and it's not comfortable to sit there, so therefore then it's no good. That means if there's an area which is 10 tefachim deep, that's how she explains, and the area which is 10 tefachim deep is a more than Beis Sosayim, then now the entire place is forbidden to carry, because anywhere which is more than 10 tefachim deep is uncomfortable. It's like you can't walk in it.
But you said that you can have the water.
But still, that's only when it's Rashi says.
Towards the end, you got the 10 tefachim.
Rashi says that when you've got low water, you bend down and drink. When you've got 10 tefachim deep, you don't drink 10 tefachim worth.
Yeah, but what happens if you're at the beginning bit?
So once you've got an area which is more than base or sign of water, which is higher than 10 tefachim, that area is not usable and everything.
Become a carmelist.
No, it becomes a kalfaf, which is forbidden to carry. Hashem, here's what it says. What?
The whole area, not just the
No, not the whole area. Also says, well, mercy, that's not true. Just like if you have a big pile of apples or oranges or fruit inside a kalfaf, it doesn't make it forbidden. Because the person thinks to himself, eventually I'll eat through the fruit. The same thing with a big pile of water, it does not matter, and one is allowed to carry. They've got pictures of it. The next picture is more important, so we'll turn anyway to it. Here, Kuf Tzadik Dalet, Kuf Tzadik Hey, but the main picture I want is Kuf Tzadik Vov. If you can mind uploading it. Kuf Tzadik Vov is the main picture, it's the next Gemara. So Kuf Tzadik Dalet is when you've having on the Gemara where it's only got a small area which is 10 tefachim deep. Kuf Tzadik Hey is when there's a big area which is deep water. Kuf Tzadik Vov is next Gemara. Tell me when you've done Kuf Tzadik Vov up. Kuf Tzadik Vov is already up?
Did you want the other ones as well or not?
Yes, why not? To do the other ones as well. That's the person can see what it looks like to have a little bit of 10 tefachim water and a lot of 10 tefachim water. So Gemara Maskon and Ma'as says it's okay. The next Gemara of what? The next Gemara? Yes. So let's just look at this Kuf Tzadik Vav, this picture for a minute. This is the next Gemara, and this is next Gemara. This Gemara carries on for some time. You've got over here like a little town. If you look at it very carefully, you've got a Rishus Rabbim. The Rishus Rabbim in this particular picture is right at the top. And from there, coming off the Rishus Rabbim is a Mavui. And it's got houses off it. Can you see the houses? And it's got a Rechova. A Rechova is an area which people don't really live in it. And then from that, it's got a path which goes between the vineyards into a river. Now, the river itself is considered a wall because we're talking about a river that slopes down 10 tefachim. Very good. If you look, it's interesting. I like the picture. I don't know if the article do it as well. Is it shows you a bit of the difference between a rochva and a chotza, in the sense that the chotza, the houses actually open up into the chotza. They don't open up into the rochva. The rochva was like an area which was like designated for storage or as a warehouse. It wasn't a place where people actually came from the houses. And the Gemara over here is going to discuss that this whole place you can't carry anywhere. Why can't you carry anywhere? Because the rochva was not hukaf l'diva, and it was more than base of sign. So you're not allowed to carry within the rochva. Now, are you allowed to carry in the mavoi or in the shvil in the path? What would you say? Can you see the picture? Are you allowed to carry in the mavoi or in the shvil?
Oh, there is a source of the article.
Not, where's the source of Pesach? From where?
The mobile is showing
From one
the
end.
source of Pesach.
Does it?
Yeah.
More, he says that later.
What does this one show?
Maybe it's referring to later. Yeah.
Well, I can't see a source of Pesach.
Yeah, it's referring to later.
No, there's a source of Pesach between the Movi and the Shusarabim.
You're
Yes.
talking about between the
I'm talking about between the Movi and the back lot. There's no source of Pesach.
That's no, you can't.
No, there isn't. Right. So you can't carry wide. Well, remember the Rosh and the Chazal.
Gezerah?
An area which is completely open, the forbidden area, you're not allowed to carry in the first area. That means, even though the Mavu is okay, in theory, because the Mavu, we talk about what you lay down Eiruvin in the Mavu, and if everything can carry, but the Mavu is completely open into the Rechava, and so is the path of the vineyards. So both is completely forbidden to carry because it's posed from Loy. Let's go inside a little bit. Ahi Rochva, there was this back lot. The avoy that there was the Pum Naro. It's a place called Pum Naro, it's the name of a place. The Chad Gisa, one end of it of a Pesach Mosa was opened up into a Movi which went into a town. Chad Gisa of a Pesach the Shvil Shel Kromim. One end was open to a path between the vineyards. The Shvil Shel Kromim have the Salik Leguted and Naro. And the path of the vineyards finished by the river edge. Omar Abai. Echinavit. What should we do? We can't carry anywhere because it's posed from lawyer. So what should we do? Lavidei Mechitza Guted and Naro. Let's put a fence by the end of the river. And they decided to change their minds. They want to make this rochva now mukaf ledira. They want to make it mukaf ledira. Now, really, what should they do when it's the rochva's mukaf ledira? What should they do? What would be the best thing?
To block off the background.
The halacha by mukaf ledira is that it has to be built ledira. And this, when it was originally built, was not mukaf ledira. So what they should do is make a breach of 10 amos and rebuild it. Rashi explains they didn't want to do that because it's a lot of effort. So they didn't want to do a whole mukaf ledira. They didn't want to knock it down and rebuild it to do a mukaf ledira. So Abai suggests that where you've got the edge going into the river, build a wall there. That wall would be there for the sake of the rochva, because at the end of the day, the rochva opens up all the way into the path and into there. And that wall should be built al das, that the rochva should be ledira, and now you made yourself an extra wall. Says Abai, what's not good about that is that since the river bank is already considered a wall, adding a wall to a wall is no good. Let's say this halacha comes up again, so let's get it clear. Imagine this is a karfuf. And we said a karfuf which is mukaf ledira is okay, not mukaf ledira is no good. And this karfuf was not mukaf ledira. We decided to use it as a lines or zebras or to use it as a warehouse. Come a few years later, we decide, you know what? Not good. We need to use it. Children need to have somewhere to play Shabbos afternoon. People need to have a walk. People need to do the washing. So we want to do it. Is it mutter to carry? Not yet. Because it's not yet a mukaf ledira. We've done nothing to it. So let's say something's very lazy. What do? They just build another wall inside the whole karfuf. Instead of knocking down the first one, building a new wall, they just build an extra wall all the way around.
The outside or the inside?
Either way, but literally adjacent to the first wall. It will be no good. Why is it no good? Because it's not mukaf ledira. You never did it for the sake of dira. You've not done anything. You've just put a wall where there was a wall. If you knock down the wall and rebuild it, you can say that's mukaf ledira. But here, you're just putting a wall to a wall. You've done nothing. Says that by adding a wall to the river bank is meaningless. The river bank is a wall. Again, by the river bank. Is nothing. Let's make a P'tuas Pesach between the vineyards and the Rochva Osugam Nishadim. That means everybody who goes through the Mavi and the Rochva is going to go eventually to the river to drink, including camels. And therefore, if you make a P'tuas Pesach there, with no time the camels will come and knock it down. And it is interesting, the Shavuot points out, something which is going to be knocked down easily, even when it's standing up, it's considered as if it's knocked down. And therefore it's not useless. Make a lechi by the entrance of the vineyard. Now you'll be allowed to carry in the vineyard. Why? Because it's not considered pods from Meloyo. Because you've got a lechi. Abai says a very big chiddush over here. That even though normally by a rochva we require you to knock down the wall and rebuild the wall, if you do a small change, but that small change has a huge halachic significance for something, then it has a huge halachic significance also for the rochva. So looking again at this picture, where the rochva opens up into the pathway of the kromim, into the pathway of the vineyard, put a lechi there. Once you put a lechi there, you're allowed to carry in the path of the vineyard, because that path of the vineyard Rashi declares it to be a movi. As you see, you've got houses opening up into it, etc. So now that lechi is matted because you've got 3 walls. You must remember, for a movi to be mutter with a lechi, it has to have 3 walls. What are the 3 walls? If you look carefully, one is the river, and on both sides it's got a proper wall, except for the few entrance places, but it's got a proper wall. So just put a lechi there. The lechi helps for the vineyard. Once it helps for the vineyard, we consider it as if it's a whole new wall for the rochva, and therefore it's a rochva which is mukaf ledira. Says the Gemara, there's a problem over here. This vineyard is okay because it's got a wall finishing by the bank of the river. But most shvil shakom, most paths which go from A to B, which are full, which go from place to place, you can't use a shvil because there's no 3 walls. So if we allow you to put a lechi by this pathway, people will think that all pathways are permitted. So Gemara says, you add a lechi to the entrance of the masa, meaning between the rochva and the mavoi. as last already pointed out, there's already a source of Pesach by the beginning of the Movi to the Shusramim, of course, because otherwise you won't be able to carry the Movi anyway. But between the Movi and the Rochva, you add a Lechi. And therefore, the Migu, the Mahani, the Lechi, the Mosa, Mahani Nami, the Rochva, since it helps for the Movi, it helps for the Rochva. Okay, the Tuli ben Mosa, Gufa, Shori.
How does that work?
Why? You're making a Lechi between the Movi and the Rochva. So now the Movi is completely mutter. It's already got 3 holes. Oh, so once it has significance for the Movi, so it's considered a new wall. Yes, because now when you put the Lechi up with the intention that it should be for the dew. And even though it's only a small post, but since the small post, that you can leave it as it is and it's still okay. Yes. So what it says, what will happen once you put the lechi up? You'll be allowed to kind of mob. That will be mutter as well, because the rochva is now considered mukaf ledira. Adding this lechi makes it as if the entire area is mukaf ledira. The Gemara got machlekes over here, but can you carry from the movi into the rochva or not? Well, what's the shaila? Chad osa v'chad shori. One permits, one forbids. And more explains chafei on that. Man de shori, one permits it or leke diyurin. Since there's not a lot of people using the rochva, so therefore it's not considered a separate reshus. Man de osa zinu davar with diyurin was a little tuli. Sometimes there will be dilduli, and therefore it will be osa. Let me like this. We've had this before. For something to forbid, one reshus to forbid another, it has to be that the other reshus is being used by people. Something which is not being used at all is not considered a place which asses on another place. This rochva, even after it's mukaf ledira, not many people come in there. Since not many people come there, so therefore it's not considered that it's not considered it's mukaf ledira, but it doesn't forbid the movi onto the rochva, the rochva onto the movi, because it's not used a lot. It's a bit like the shittas of Shimon, that you're allowed to carry from your rooftop to my chotzer, because a rooftop is not a normal diyurin. Diyurin, when people inhabited places, they forbid. Why? If I've got my garden, you got your garden, mine's inhabited, yours inhabited, your inhabitants forbids me. But if you're not using your garden hardly ever, you can't forbid me. Since the rochva is hardly used, therefore it doesn't forbid on the movi. Another man says yes, it does, because since sometimes people move into the rochva, so it does forbid. Okay, today we finished early. It's a new topic, so we'll stop here. Any questions? Oh, this is sometimes a couple of days, right, a bit longer. Officially it's 50 minutes, so it's gone to 55. But very good. Okay, so yes, half an hour. Why? Oh, you're right. 35 is